Great night on the bubble last night for the SEC. Texas wins in Starkville against number 25 Mississippi State. They had to have it. Georgia won. They've now won 3 straight. Some are calling them a tournament lock now. And Arkansas got a win over Vandy. The bubble could not have been better for the SEC than it was last night.
Well, they go back at it tonight. Oklahoma back out there. Lance's favorite choice for the tournament. The Boomers Sooners back out there with a chance to work their way in. Dalen Cuff, you see him all the time on ESPN talking college basketball. Here on Sirius XM as well, and he is with us now on the Shannara Hotline. Welcome in, Dalen. How are you today?
Doing well, fellas. We're hitting that point of the year where I'm tired of hearing my own voice, but it's great to be on with you. Let's talk. Let's chat.
Yes, we like hearing your voice.
Well, just because you brought up Oklahoma, and look, and I know they're in action tonight, but I got to ask you, we've talked about there's got to be 68 teams, and we've also talked about this might be, or this is probably the greatest one season in SEC basketball history with all of these great teams. But how can a team right now that is 8 games under 500 in conference play be a tournament team?
Guys, have you seen the ACC this year? have you tuned in? Because it's tough over there. Like it is not good. And I'll tell you what, like the league, it's not. Is it the SEC's best year ever? It's bar none. It's the best conference season in the history of the game. I mean, the Big East got 11 teams in 2011. I think you're going to get 12 or maybe 13 SEC teams in. And you look at the depth of the league, because at the back end of that Big East last year, that year in 2011, there were some doldrums. There were some nights off that you can get a W. Ask anybody how easy it goes to Columbia, South Carolina, and win a game right now. Like it's not easy. Georgia, that win last night by Georgia was great. I mean, Auburn won possession game, A&M by 4. Florida got out of their skin of their teeth. And that team's won 2 games in the league. That team's also beaten Clemson, who's the second best team in the ACC. So this is what we're looking at now. Oklahoma specifically, I know they're struggling. They lost to Kentucky. Man, Owe was out of his mind last week, and that's heartbreaking for them because that's you got to win those home games when you have the opportunities. Their non-league wins, guys. I mean, they beat Arizona, they beat Louisville. Arizona's top 3 in the Big 12. Louisville's won 17 of 18 games right now. Like the committee, I think is going to look at those wins and they're going to carry value. Michigan, top 3 of the Big 10. Like those are going to carry value. I think if you're talking about the whole package, the whole breadth of the season. You have to look at that and value that. If a Virginia team last year could get in that was horrific at the end of the year and getting blown out by an average of like 18 points and get in and then get beat by 30, an Oklahoma team that's in games, late, tight games that can't close them but has won them throughout the course of the season, I see why they could end up on the right side of the bubble. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Well, they've lost 7 of 8, but yeah, I get it.
To your point on the ACC, we sent this out yesterday. Duke has had 11 wins in conference, 25 plus, 11 of them. Alabama, Florida, and Auburn have combined for 6. I mean, it's just absurd the level of competition Alabama, Auburn, Florida, and the rest of the SEC have had to play versus what Duke has had to face.
It's night and day. It's the players, the pros, the coaching is really good in the ACC. It's just they don't have the players. I mean, you need to have the dudes, and the league has the dudes, and they've got great coaches and great venues. And also how the college basketball is structured right now is if you win the games in November, December, that sets up the situation for January and February, and it's almost you can't change it. The SEC right before Christmas had won 80% of their games against the other Power 5 conferences. You add in the Big East as well. Like this is a dominant showing by them that makes sense. Now the ACC, it's just different. Like right now, they don't have the players, they don't have the depth. And I will say this about Duke. I've said this for weeks now, and I feel like people may echo it, people argue it. My concern with them is when you play in a late game situation, especially when you're led by freshmen, I want them to have been through those situations multiple times. I want them to look in the huddle and understand if you're down 3 with a minute to go, what we got to do. If you're up 3, how we're going to get it done. And to be comfortable and confident that you can. They've only played in a handful of close games. The only real close game in league play, they lost to Clemson. At Wake Forest, it was like a 6-point game. They went zone, great call by Shire, and that changed the whole complexion of the last 5 minutes of that game. But late game against Clemson, they collapsed. They could not make the right plays. They also attacked Cooper Flagg offensively and put him in some real tough spots. And he struggled in that regard, whether it was Chase Hunter going at him or Locken going at him. Then you go to look, the last time they played in close games before that was November and December. And Kentucky and Kansas, again, Knipple has it late in one game, turns it over. Cooper has it late in his hands one game, turns it over, they lose. You need to be battle tested, I feel like. There's one and have the understanding of what it takes to win. To win 6-6 in March and April, I feel like you have to have been through it. So that's my concern with them as being the betting favorite right now to win the whole thing. I don't agree with that. I wouldn't put my money there. I think they can easily get to a Final Four, but from the cut down the nets, they're going to have to survive some games in the tournament, and that's not at all what they've had to do, and that concerns me.
Speaking of cutting down the nets or getting to the Final Four, we've got one of those type of matchups tonight just down the road from us, Florida and Alabama. When you look at this Florida basketball team, inside, outside, they seem to have everything it would take to win the national championship. What do you think of what Todd Golden has done there with that program, and how good does that team look when you watch them?
Todd, the great coach. Todd started his coaching career at my alma mater with Kyle Smith. He learned under Kyle, and obviously he played for Randy Bennett for 5 years. And Todd's a great guy, great coach, and has done an outstanding job. He has an outstanding staff as well that has supported him, and he's got good players and puts them in the right positions to win. And to your point, I think they're a team that's coming to the national consciousness. You could get them at 25-1 to win the championship back in November. That number now is like 8-1. And they're the biggest movers in terms of like real contenders, and you see why. They offensively, they're an elite team. Great guard play. Whether it's Richard or Martin or Clayton or Aberdeen off the bench, really good guards where it's trite but true. In March, guards win you games. They can make something out of nothing. They can convert. They are changing the way in which you can win a game most times. Offensive rebounding, one of the elite offensive rebounding teams in the country. They got Biggs and Condon and now Handlock getting healthy again, and Hauk that can stretch the floor and play inside. Shinny Lou's great on the interior. They offensive rebound on elite level, top 5 in the nation. And last but not least, they're way better defensively, man. They are hard to break down, the hard to score against. Tonight's game is really interesting. Obviously, Alabama coming off a game where they essentially gave it to Tennessee down the stretch. The last 90 seconds, they did not execute well. And Nate Oates did a great job taking accountability afterwards, said it's on me. And I get that as a coach. He's a great coach, and he would say that. The players also know that there were like mistakes on every possession that are on the players. Like Filan, you have to give the ball to Sears. Like Mark has to have the ball in his hands at the end of the game. When you're unbounding the ball underneath, you have to screen hard to cut hard to get open. 5-second violation. There's a bunch of mistakes made. So them now returning home, I think it's going to be a great game. That over/under, guys, 178.5.
Yep. Crazy.
Yep.
That is a monster number for college basketball. And I think Alabama, Kentucky, wasn't it 181? I feel like there might have been one higher in. Was it around there?
Yeah, it was right around 180. Yep.
Okay, so I thought in my head there was another one recently that was really high, and that's really high. I do think the under is in play here, which is a scary proposition when you're dealing with the Crimson Tide, because I think Florida's going to want to run some sets and slow it and make Alabama play in a half-court game. Not that Florida can go up and down, but if you make Alabama play differently than that I think that takes them off their apex. When they're at their best is when they are grabbing that ball off the rim and they're going and they're making you do the same thing. Are you shooting quick shots? Are you taking quicker threes? Are you playing at a pace that you cannot sustain? So I wonder about pace control in this game. So I'm going to lean to a very close but entertaining, like 174-point game. I can see that happening, but I think it's going to be a great game. I would lean to Alabama winning for sure, and probably covering at -2.5, given the situation that they're coming off of. But these are two teams these are two of my favorite teams to win the championship. It's those two and Auburn, in my mind, are the 3 favorites to win this thing.
Dalen Koff playing very heavy SEC, which is very good here in Birmingham, and we appreciate him doing that.
So when you say championship, you mean national championship, right?
Not just conference.
I mean national.
Okay.
I mean the one that everybody's going to be locked in on. That SEC tournament's going to be awesome. But guys, the SEC tournament entry is in day one. Like there could be play-in games for the entry to get in the NCAA tournament. So that first day there, I think, is like one of the most intriguing first days of a conference tournament we've ever seen, because usually those are afterthoughts. Not in this league.
So your fear, though, with Duke is they haven't played in tight games, which I get that, because their 18 conference wins are by almost 24 points per game. But when you look at teams like Houston and maybe even getting into St. John's and Michigan State, what are the faults with those teams?
Houston, I think Houston's right there. I think Houston and Duke are the 2 most likely contenders to win it outside of the 3 SEC teams, which I would lean towards. Partially because their cultures, they're going to defend, they're going to offensive rebound, they're going to make you feel them on every possession, and it's just hard to play against them. They'll turn you over. It's tough. This team can shoot the ball better, though. They don't take a ton of threes, but they shoot it around 39%. Sharp's been really good most of the season when he's been healthy. LJ Cryer is maybe the player of the year in the Big 12. I don't know. That's an interesting conversation, but he takes and makes a lot of big shots. They play through Roberts now at times late games. They'll play him out of short roll and let him kind of do stuff for you away from the basket a bit. So offensively, they're much better. They can make shots. So there aren't many faults with Houston. The problem is sometimes they can get stuck. And Milos Uzan, guys, he may be the most improved player in the country over the course of the season. And he's been outstanding for them the last 2 months. So there's not a lot of faults with them. Sometimes they can get stuck offensively. Michigan State, my concern is the same one with St. John's. You're going to defend. You're going to rebound. You got to make shots, boys. At some point, you gotta make shots. And both those teams are bottom 50 or bottom 60 in the nation in 3-point percentage. They want to get downhill. They need to get downhill. They need to turn you over. Michigan State really wants to play fast, and they can be that. That can work. I think the formula, though, when you get into the Final Four, Elite Eight situation, shot making is going to be necessary to win some of those games, and that's where I waver on both those teams. The coaching, of course, is outstanding with Pitino and Izzo, but they can't go out there and make guys make 3-pointers, and that's not what either team does very well.
ESPN's Dalen with us on the Alexander Shinora Trial Attorneys Hotline, and you can follow him on social media with his name right there, just to add Dalen Koff. This is a tough question on the fly. I'm going to say that before I ask the question. But Texas A&M and Buzz Williams, they give Auburn fits. Buzz Williams has had Bruce Pearl's number. Bruce Pearl will tell you that, right? And he said it again after the game last night, which was obvious. Is there another team that Auburn could face nationally in the NCAA tournament that can do to them what Texas A&M does to them, where if you're an Auburn fan, you see that name pop up in a bracket, you're like, oh, crap, they got some Texas A&M DNA in them?
Well, it's funny you said it because last night you got to look at the spot too. Like they just won the SEC championship.
Yeah,
they come off of that. It's this massive mountain decline. People are celebrating, and rightfully so. A&M's lost 4 straight. And what does A&M do, to your point, from a stylistic standpoint? They're one of the best offensive rebounding. They're the best offensive rebounding team in the country. They get to the free throw line really well. What is Auburn's 2 kind of weaknesses? You got to find them. They're an average defensive rebounding team, and they can foul and put you on the line. Their defensive free throw rate is not good. So yes, stylistically and in the spot, that was not good. That was why the ESPN Bet Live yesterday, Texas A&M plus 4.5 was the play that we were talking about, because it just seemed like they would cover. Now, did I think they'd win and control the whole game? No, but they did cover. So to answer your question, we've already seen it happen once this year. I think it is Florida. Florida defends offensive rebounds at an elite level. They get to the free throw line. The same 2 weaknesses. They have guards that can make. They have more guards that can make shots, and we obviously saw them go into the Plains, which is the most impressive win in the season, and win that game in a multi-possession game. So I think that's a thing that you wouldn't be scared to see them, but and everybody like that, they're well aware of what Florida's about and how Florida could potentially exploit some of these areas where Auburn is not elite. And this is comparing to Auburn's excellent at everything and average at those 2 things, which the average can survive and can win you a championship in those 2 areas. But from a recipe and a style standpoint, and who Florida has on their roster, that'd be a concern.
In about 12 days, America will be filling out their bracket, right? Mm-hmm. So what do I look at, and just a little advice, do I look at like a BYU team who seems to be so good right now? Or do I remember what Iowa State, they played each other last night, ironically, but when Iowa State was playing at Maui, and just after that, I was like, dang, Iowa State can win the national championship. Should I look more recently, or should I remember what a team can possibly do at their best? How do you approach it when you're filling out a bracket?
A recency matters. Health matters too. Obviously, that's the most obvious thing. But like, if you want to pick a team to win a championship, make sure they got all their guys. Let's just start there. Make sure that somebody's not carrying an injury, or somebody didn't sit out in the conference tournament, or something of that nature. But I do think that the team sheets for the committee should go back to. You should have the last 10 games on there. That doesn't exist as a metric anymore. They took it off like 4 or 5 years ago. It makes no sense to me in today's transfer portal, or how much teams are developing and changing over the course of the year. You should want the teams playing the best at the right time. I think as you're filling out your bracket, those things definitely matter. But to your question, Iowa State is one of those teams where they have been not healthy for a lot of these ups and downs through the course of the year. They're getting fully healthy. Last night's win was more about BYU than it was about Iowa State. Like they played really terribly at the beginning of the game and endured through that. They space you, they make shots. They got pros too, folks. If you're looking at rosters, take a look at the projections for the NBA draft. They're not always right, but talent wins games sometimes. And BYU, whether it's Demon or Saunders, they got NBA players. And I would say there's really good players, and maybe some in the NBA, but that wasn't that shocking when you look at who the players have, who they're coached, and how they play. But how you're playing, but also once everybody's healthy, how good is your good? Scott Van Pelt says it all the time. SVP will always say, how good is your good? Iowa State's good is really good. So yes, you do look back and see where these teams hit their apex, who they're playing, who they beat, and did they remain healthy? Or learn about the storylines a little bit. That helps you understand where teams went up and down. Now I realize most people get their bracket and just say my mom went to Iowa State, or I like the Cyclones, or whatever. But there are other ways to do this thing.
You've already told us your 3 favorites, all from the SEC, in Auburn, Florida, Alabama. Whether it's 11, 12, 13, how many teams come out of that conference? I'm going to include Tennessee here. Outside of those top 4, Who do you think can make the deepest run, make a Final Four run to San Antonio?
Missouri. I think what Dennis Gates has done has been outstanding. They play deep, they turn you over, they stress you on both ends of the floor, they make shots, and they're playing with incredible confidence. And they've won games on the road, they've won games at home, and they beat Florida at Florida, who have just sung their praises for a while here now. So I think Missouri is that team that could make a deep run. And I think you have to be able to play on both sides of the ball and play in different types of games, and to be able to win a couple tournament games, to win 2 or 3 or 4. And I think they can do that.
All right, before you go, Dalen, in the chat room, Keith wants to know the book over your right shoulder on Churchill. Do you have a brief review on that book?
That one is long, as well as the Frederick Douglass one, boys. This is the summer. They're each like 800 pages long. We have not opened them. We have not read them yet. Everything else has been consumed up here. Churchill has not been read yet. Neither has Douglass. So the summer, we're going to get a little beach time in, and we're working on our reading.
Oh, yeah.
Until then,
Churchill, real good beach read there.
Churchill on the beach.
Well,
huh?
so I like
That's a Columbia guy speaking.
There you go. Let's get deep on the beach. We're going to do it. Let's do it right.
All right. Follow him on social media at Dalen Cuff, at Dalen Cuff. See him on ESPN throughout the NCAA basketball season. Thank you very much for the time. Always great catching up with you.
Anytime, guys. Be well.
All right, buddy. Take care. Dalen with us. By the way, on the Shannara hotline, Alexander Shannara, trial attorneys.